You're listening to the We Are Libertarians podcast network. Find all of our shows at wearelibertarians.com. Welcome to Now Hear This. I'm your host, Chris Spangle. Now Hear This is a conversation with leaders in Indianapolis that are working to improve the lives of Hoosiers. Our goal is to empower you to join in their work and make a difference while informing you about the unseen aspects of life in Indiana. If you miss an episode, you can listen via podcast at nowhearthisindy.com. We have our first returning guest under the new regime here at Now Hear This. I spoke to Kent Kramer, who is the CEO of Goodwill, Indianapolis, right as the pandemic hit. It aired early pandemic, and I talked to their press person. They're like, a lot of that is different now. So I wanted to get Kent back on to talk about, everybody knows Goodwill. Everybody understands, the stores. You go in, you drop off things that, that are in your house, maybe extra clothes, and that general business model, but they do so much more. And we'll talk about that first in case you didn't catch our first interview. But first, let me say welcome to Kent. How are you?
Chris, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back. What seemed like a very long time ago, but it was just about 4 months ago.
It feels like a completely different lifetime. It really does. You were the last of the pre-pandemic guests where everything was just nice and peaceful and fun and going well, and now it's all upside down. But let's start with the overall picture of Goodwill and recap some of what we talked about last time. What are some of the various programs that make up Goodwill?
Yeah, well, Chris, our mission, we work to empower people to increase their independence and reach their potential. So that's what Goodwill is about. And we do that through a variety of programs. And mission statement says we do programs in employment, education, and in health. So a lot of folks, as you said, they know us for retail, and we employ a lot of folks through that avenue. And even though it's a job is like their foot in the door, we do wraparound resources for those folks, and we really try and lead them towards a career or education, anything that might lead them towards a job that has family sustaining wages, either that's with Goodwill or outside of Goodwill. So that's, we've been doing that for decades. And pre-pandemic, we had 4,200 employees. We brought most of them back, about 3,000 in retail. We brought almost all of them back, and that's now our new charge is to offer employment opportunities for folks. With unemployment being north of 11% right now, there are people out there looking for jobs. So employment is a key component of what we do. Education is the other kind of component. Another component, we operate 16 high schools, and those have had to adjust how we operate. But for the purposes of this question, 16 high schools, about 4,500 high school students. 15 of those schools are adult high schools called the Excel Center. They're located throughout the state. And it provides an opportunity, the Excel Center provides an opportunity for adults to get their high school diploma and additional certifications and credentials. So these are, said the last time, nearly 500,000 adult Hoosiers who do not have a high school diploma. Trying to navigate life is difficult at times. We also operate the Indianapolis Met, which is a traditional high school located downtown Indianapolis. Then we have a whole slew of other mission programs where we do home visitation program with first-time mothers called Nurse Family Partnership. We work with seniors. We have a placement organization. We do contract manufacturing, work with reentry population. So a lot of times, you kind of keep going on, but there is more to Goodwill than a store.
You also have the traveling nurse service. Is that still running?
It is. Now, the the visits are now done virtually, but we're still providing the same types of services, checking in with mothers and their babies. But because of COVID, we're doing that in a virtual environment, still delivering, necessary items for them, whether it's formula or diapers when they're in high need, but just doing it on the doorstep instead of in person.
Yeah, and going back and listening to that interview for the impact that just the nursing service alone makes, I mean, it's truly incredible, and that's not something I knew that Goodwill did. Talking to Kramer, who is the CEO of Goodwill of Central and Southern Indiana. And in the last interview, we talked about one of the most significant challenges as CEO, and that was right before the pandemic struck. And you talked about the merger between the central and southern regions. Goodwill is a national organization. There's different, I think you're completely independent, or clarify that for us. What is the distinction again?
Yeah, there's 157 independently ran and operated and governed Goodwills across North America. So our board of directors is local. And the money that we raise stays right here in central and southern Indiana for our Goodwill. So we're one of a network of federated Goodwills across North America, 157.
So in our last interview, just talking, I mean, the challenge was managing such a sprawling, large organization, especially as it's coming together. I imagine, is your response still the same? Is that still the main challenge? What is the main challenge of the last 4 months? What does it look like for you?
Yes, I did list that as my kind of the biggest challenge. I've been CEO about 5.5 years, been with Goodwill about 18 and a half. And that was my biggest challenge. Now, by far, it is navigating through a pandemic. I teased the gentleman that led the search committee for me. I said, there were no pandemic questions in my interview process. What's this all about? So it has been extremely difficult, some very hard decisions across the organization. Blessed with a fantastic team that has helped craft the direction we needed to go. And help me with some of those really tough decisions, and work with really solid boards of directors, throughout this process. But it's been a tough 4 months, and it continues to be tough, Chris. There's still a lot of unknowns out there, a lot of increasingly difficult decisions to make. We just keep plodding along, but yeah, this is number one now on this from a difficulty standpoint in my career, what I've had to manage through.
Yeah, and forgive me if this is somewhat of a delicate question. I don't, you don't probably want to put all your trade secrets out on the radio, but I'm curious, as employment has been the big topic through all this. Of course, health and safety is there, but when you're an organization like Goodwill that is a first-time employer or an employer of people who have difficulties getting employed elsewhere, I mean, I imagine that the challenges that you'd faced, what are some of the top 2 or 3 big decisions that you're going, all right, we as an organization need to solve this problem? What were some of those?
Yeah. So when we were required to shut our stores down, which we did for about 8 weeks, the difficult decision to furlough individuals and lay off individuals was probably right up there as far as really tough to manage through. As I said before, we got about 3,000 people in our retail division. If the registers aren't ringing, there's not necessarily a need to have all of those folks working. Now, we made that decision and we furloughed around 2,500. Luckily, we were able to maintain our donation stream and leave our donation collection areas that are attached to the stores open. So we did keep about 500 folks employed, but right around 2,500 were put on furlough. And just making sure, because a lot of these individuals that we employ and serve are individuals that have barriers, like having a disability or lacking a high school diploma or having a criminal background, and knowing that there are limited options out there. Sometimes we are, sometimes the only option, or the last option, honestly. So knowing that we were doing that, and the federal government helped on that, knowing that individuals would get, through the end of July, $600 a week. That helped in our decision making and saying, you know what, our folks are going to stay whole. And Goodwill made the decision. It was a financial decision, but we made the decision to keep them all whole on their health care insurance. So we paid that while they were on furlough, so they were able to stay whole from a financial perspective as well as their health perspective with their insurance. So, and that, those decisions, that's just two of many that we had to make, but that never thought I would have to make, furloughing 2,500 people. But that's kind of where we did, and very pleased to say we've brought back almost all of those at this point.
That's great. And so, I mean, just in the impact of that on people's lives. I mean, I'm in a middle class spectrum, and so my Facebook is middle class and white collar, and so doing this show is often a window into how other folks live. And can you give our listeners a sense of what this period has been like for your employees who were furloughed? Did that $600 a week, did that sort of keep everybody stable and in a good position? What did it become immensely tougher? Like, what's the degree of difficulty for your workforce through the last 4 months?
Yes, and had the opportunity to speak with many of them, and for those that did get it, and I think you've probably heard that some people waited quite a bit to get it processed, but for those that did get it, it did in essence keep them whole. However, most of the families that we employ and serve, it's 2 and 3 jobs for that family to kind of keep afloat. And lots of times if they worked at Goodwill, their spouse or significant other might work at a restaurant. And, just a lot of uncertainty around jobs. And, if you're both off of work, trying to care for your family, it gets really difficult. I know there were issues where we had to help people find resources for housing, for childcare. There was just a lot to navigate through as a family, and many times, families in poverty, they have a lot of other obstacles that they face as well. So I would say that the $600 a week did help, but the uncertainty of knowing how long that will last, how long they're going to be out of work. I am so pleased to say, there was this thought that because of that $600 a week, people would refuse to come back to work, and they would kind of rest on that until it ran out. I'm very pleased to say that our folks came back and saw the value in that work and the stability of having that job. And for us, it was didn't know going into starting to make those phone calls, but just about everybody did come back. So that's that's kind of where we're at right now.
Did you have a portion that are concerned about coming back to retail due to health concerns? And what are you doing in terms of your stores to keep your workforce safe?
Yeah, we've worked with our employees, and really haven't seen a lot of that. Can't come back because of the health reasons. Now, all of our employees are wearing masks, and we installed during that 8-week down period. We installed plexiglass at the registers. We put new processes in place for taking donations. So right now our employees aren't out there, so we're just asking our donors to leave their donations in boxes, so there's no interaction between the employee and the donor. And so we put in a lot of measures. Our fitting rooms right now are not open. One of our biggest, I guess, sales opportunities that we have, Chris, and I think you may have been at one or two of these, is our 50% off sale, which is on the first Saturday of every month. Because of the crowds that those attract, we've had to postpone those indefinitely, just because there's so many people, and we're keeping people 6 feet away in line. We have, like a lot of retailers, marked 6 feet between folks waiting in line. So we've really tried hard to put all the measures in place. Retailers, continually cleaning, and we opened up with, shorter windows of operation. We've expanded that now, but we continue to listen and do our best.
Have you seen, I mean, we're a couple months into this. Have you heard reports of, this? I mean, I'm trying to get a handle on the virus because it seems spotty in terms of reporting. And retail, what I've heard over and over again in reporting on retail is that if you're shopping, you're fairly safe. It's the people who are working there, and that's why the plexiglass is necessary, because they have the repeated, exposure. But have you seen anything in your workforce or shopping or any experiences over the last couple months with the virus that make you think that, all right, we need to take these steps? Have you tweaked anything? What has the retail experience been like with COVID for Goodwill?
Yeah, so we thought initially, okay, let's look at this, and maybe we can get our donations back to where we're greeting somebody at their car and the trunk is open and we're able to, shake their hand at time, and thank them appropriately. Or we thought maybe fitting rooms might be closed for a month, because people try things on and they leave them in the fitting room, and we're kind of constantly going in and cleaning them out and opening the door for folks. And because of, like you said, the reports that are coming out, and because of, honestly, of our success in not having an abundance of cases within our own organization, we're like, okay, this is working, so let's keep pushing on. And we just made the decision on our 50% off sale. That's people ask all the time, so let's just go ahead and say, okay, through October, we're not going to have that. We're going to look at other ways to reward our loyal shoppers. But right now, trying to keep those crowds down is what we're doing, which is counterintuitive to, myself, who's been in retail for 30 years, to say, okay, what can we do to keep people out?
Yeah, I was downtown and standing outside of a BW3's that was 25% full, and they're like, an hour and a half wait. I'm like, okay, I'll just go home and have SpaghettiOs. So that's great. I thought of you, and I live down on the south side, and there's an Aldi's right next to a Goodwill, and I was going into the Aldi's, and there were a couple employees under the bay where you do your drop-offs processing an enormous amount of things that have just been left on the front stoop. And I think this has been a great time for spring cleaning over the last 4 or 5 months for folks. Have you just seen a massive increase in donations of just goods?
We have, and I'll just take a second if you don't mind. I just want to thank those folks that were stay at home and pinned up. I know what they were doing. They were cleaning out their closets, their garages, their attics, and they brought it to Goodwill, and we are so grateful for that. And because of that, we were able to bring people back at a much quicker pace. Because of that, more Hoosiers are now employed and working in productive jobs. So, and we're able to continue our other services as well. So, it's kind of weird though, Chris, because we operated under limited hours, so people were still bringing stuff after we closed. So I would anticipate, or I guess I would speculate that what you saw was what I've seen out there. Is that sometimes it takes us a while to get it cleaned up and get all brought inside because of the volume and not being out there to greet and take the donations in right away. So if there's a long line, it could be half hour, 45 minutes before our employee gets out there to bring it in, because we're trying to limit the interaction. But yeah, donations have been strong, and we're trying to put those to be good stewards and put those to good use.
Now, in the background of your Zoom is one of your Excel centers.
Yes.
When you popped up at first, I was like, oh, he's in the parking lot of and then I realized it was a green screen. I don't know what schools are going to do in the fall, and I think if you're an administrator, you're probably 50-50 on things right now. I mean, it's got to be a tough choice. I mean, as you look at these high schools, your Excel centers, your educational portions, a lot of these wraparound services that you have for that, what are you thinking in terms of the fall and how you'll proceed with schooling?
Yes. So right now, we just had our school board meeting last week and had our high-level plans approved. And we're going to be operating under what's a hybrid model, where some instruction will be via e-learning and some will be at our bricks and mortar locations. We'll be following CDC guidelines, and everybody will be masked up, and PPE will be available. We'll double down on our cleaning. And if anybody wishes to go e-learning 100%, then we will afford them that opportunity. Our Indian Met High School will be kind of splitting. It's a school of 270. We're going to split that in half and have partial instruction in school and partial online. And although we finished strong in the spring when school wrapped up, we had solid graduate numbers. We do know for the folks that we serve, and through surveying them, that the in-person instruction is what they get the most value out of. So we want to figure out a way to continue to provide that. However, we're ready to go back to all e-learning if that's what's required from either the state or through the Department of Education. So right now we're kind of planning to operate in a hybrid model, which the Excel Center opens this week, and that's what they're operating effectively today.
School in the middle of July, Kent.
Yes.
Talking to Kent Kramer, who is the CEO of Goodwill of Central and Southern Indiana. And we're talking about education in the fall. And so how does the hybrid model work? Because is it, you have I'm thinking of my own schooling. I'm sure most listeners are. You've got a classroom of 20, 30 kids. Are you putting a camera up in the back of the room and YouTube streaming that, or do you have a dedicated classroom for online and you have one teacher doing that? How does that hybrid model work?
Chris, you just nailed it with the second part. The first analogy you made is camera in the back of the room. That's really difficult to do. What works is like what we're doing right now, from a Zoom perspective, where the teacher's there and there's interaction, and so we have to offer both offerings, in class setting, and then separate instruction on the for the e-learning. So it's quite the matrix to fill out when you're scheduling students, and but have an incredible team that's doing that. And then even in the classroom, from a safety precautions, we're looking at cohorts and trying to keep the same kids in the same classrooms and limiting the number of people they're exposed to in case there is a positive case, and we've got to trace that to all the interactions. Looking at serving lunches in the classroom, or really just spreading out and having multiple lunches so there can be plenty of space amongst them. So it's just like I talked about, things I never thought I would do. We've had that from a retail perspective and definitely from an education perspective.
When we get to cold and flu season, I mean, do you treat everything like COVID, or are you going to have requirements? I mean, I think that's going to be the real challenge for literally everyone. Is this a cold or is this COVID?
Yeah, we're many of our sites are taking temperatures, and that's so if you got a high temperature, you can't proceed, and that I do think the new norm will be that and for us to be able to offer those e-learning opportunities, the new norm is if you do have a fever or you're coughing or sneezing, but you feel okay, you still need to go to the e-learning platform.
So
I don't know how we're going to decide what's what.
I think it'll probably be made for you. That's
yes.
my guess. So, and that's kind of my last question on education is that, refreshing my memory, the Excel Center and your educational wing is really engaged in a lot of folks who are at the lower rung of the economic ladder. A lot of those people are they're part-time, or they don't have the ability to work from home. How do you deal with one of my big concerns with, forcing everyone to do virtual learning is the impact economically on those families that can't afford to miss work because they've got to stay home with their kids. I mean, how is that being worked through on your end? What are you seeing in terms of plans down the road for that?
Yeah, I saw a study last week that said 40% of the people that have been forced to work from home will continue working from home, and 60% will go back. And I know we're looking at that as an organization and looking at productivity and getting things done. So, for us as an educator, we've been speaking to how can we prepare folks for that, right? Because it's, and from a workforce developer. So a lot of interviews are done now. A lot of interviews are done via Zoom or via Skype, and that's preparing people for that is just, it's a different skill set. Or taking that first job and it's a remote job, and how do you communicate with your employer? How do you get things done? New ways to measure productivity. Preparing a workforce for that, we consider that a big challenge for us right now. We saw exactly what you just explained. what people are facing is they've got to work and they've got kids at home. And now they're trying to work from home or go to school from home themselves while kids are going to school. We deployed and we got a nice grant. We cobbled together several grants to issue 600 laptops, because what we found is, one device at a family is just not enough when you got one person working and a couple students, and it just becomes more and more difficult. So those types of resources are going to have to be made available, Chris, so people can, figure that out. And then the whole childcare thing, I just heard of a school system today that announced that they'll be going to the e-learning platform indefinitely. And I'm just thinking about those families with jobs, and there's definitely it separates the folks that have the ability to make adjustments and do that, and others that don't. And we'll continue to work with those that just have a difficult time doing that. We've got some tough days ahead of us on that.
All right. Well, quickly, because we're woefully over time, but that's my fault. This is a fascinating conversation. How can people help Goodwill? What can they do to help you guys out?
Well, continue to donate their gently used household items and clothing. We will be good stewards and put that to good use, employing people and providing services. If you know somebody that is unemployed, Goodwill is hiring, and not only will they get a job, they'll get. We'll wrap our resources around them to help them be prepared for what's next. Somebody doesn't have a high school diploma, please refer them to Goodwill. All of that can be found at our website at Goodwill Indy, goodwillindy.org. And we'd love to provide any assistance that we can.
All right, Kent Kramer, who is the CEO of Goodwill Central and Southern Indiana, thank you so much for joining me.
Okay, thanks a lot. Everybody have a great day.
Thanks for listening to Now Hear This. I'm your host, Chris Spangle. If you missed any portion of our program, you can listen on our website, nowhearthisindy.com. If you'd like to have your organization featured on the show, please contact Gabby at 317-475-7407 or via the contact page on our website. Thanks for listening, and we will be back again next weekend with Now Hear This.
Hey, everybody. I'm Hannah Cox.
And I'm Brad Palumbo.
We're the host of the Base Politics Network, and we want you to join us for our weekly news roundup, The Base Brief.
We believe in teaching people how to think, not what to think. So if you're tired of getting your news from overtly partisan journalists, this show is for you. We have no tribe, we pull no punches, and the only team we root for is the free market and individual liberty.
On top of that, we're two good friends who both work as libertarian conservative commentators, but we don't always agree. On the Base Brief, we let you in on the conversations we're already having as we work to analyze the impacts of public policies, spill the industry tea, and hash out our hot takes.
Plus, you'll get bonus interviews with top liberty lawmakers and influencers like Senator Rand Paul, Congresswoman Nancy Mace, and Libertarian Party Vice Presidential nominee Spike Cohen. Search Based Politics on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts to subscribe now. That's BASED Politics.
We can't wait to catch up with you, and in the meantime, stay based.